McDonald's meets the Minecraft universe with one of 6 collectibles and your choice of a Big Mac or 10-piece McNuggets with spicy Nether Flame sauce. Now available with a Minecraft movie meal.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time. A Minecraft movie only in theaters.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and the San Francisco 49ers have drafted edge rusher out of Georgia, Mykel Williams, at number 11 overall in tonight's 2025 NFL Draft. Only made one pick today, no trade ups, no trade backs, but they got a pretty darn good player we have to dive into, analyze, and project what his future could be and what year one could look like for him, and even get into what led the San Francisco 49ers to fall in love with a player like Mykel Williams. All that coming up here on 49ers Access, but don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that 5-star audio podcast review, and let's jump into the Niners' first round pick, that of Mykel Williams. The NFL draft this year brought us a handful of surprises, that being the Jacksonville Jaguars trading up for Travis Hunter. That was a wide left field move I didn't see coming, but that was had in the first round, in the first few minutes of the first round at pick number 2 overall. And then throughout the draft, you saw the Atlanta Falcons trade a future first round draft pick with the Los Angeles Rams. What are you doing, Atlanta, for James Pierce Jr.? You saw a team like the Houston Texans trade out of the first round, and other big moves made in Thursday night's first round. But the San Francisco 49ers stood pat. They stood true. They made the pick with the player they believed was the best one on the board at the time, and even a player that John Lynch said they tried to trade up for in the first round of this year's NFL draft. But we've talked long and hard about Mykel Williams in our last 2 mock drafts. If you've been watching the show or listening to the show, you would know by this point in time we have been mocking Mykel Williams to San Francisco in the last 2 mock drafts we've done. It's a pick I think at least most of us saw coming, or at least knew he was going to be in the running for this pick on day one. I wasn't shocked by it, the way John Lynch spoke about the edge rushing position in his pre-draft press conference, and thus we have the San Francisco 49ers landing on Mykel Williams. He is the highest drafted edge rusher and defensive player since Nick Bosa and I believe Javon Kinlaw in the first round. Obviously, San Francisco has been pretty good the last few years and haven't had a first-round pick in a long time. He is the highest drafted edge rusher since Drake Jackson in the second round a handful of years ago. So Mykel Williams has a lot of pressure put on him to perform in year one. And my quick, simple thoughts on this are, I like this move. It isn't a home run, but I don't think there was many home run hitting moves to be made in the first round unless you're making a massive move up for Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, or Ashton Genty. Outside of that, this draft doesn't really have home run talent. And if you like a player and you believe in them, take them where they stand. And San Francisco did that today with Mykel Williams. He's 6'5", 265 pounds, and he's only 20 years old. I think that's a big sticking point for the Niners in this draft. Well, yes, he's a junior. Yes, he's a 3-year starter at Georgia. He's very much proven to be a starting caliber player for year one. He's only 20. And that matters here, where in last year's draft, they're taking players that are 25, 24 years old, 26 years old, guys who have played football for 5+ years in college. Although Mykel has only played 3 at Georgia, being a junior. You're getting a rather young player that you hope you have Robert Saleh and Chris Kosaric on your defensive line. They can kind of shape his pass rush plan, where right now there really isn't one. There's some erratic hand usage. There really isn't a pass rush plan whatsoever. Doesn't really possess the pass rushing moves you like, the swim move, rip and pull. He is simply just a powerful SOB that wants to bull rush and win with power. And if he can do that, it's going to be night for NFL offensive tackles. You see his tape at Georgia. He's pushing back dudes left and right. He's opening up pockets. He's pushing quarterbacks and moving them towards the opposite edge rusher. So you're hoping that's the case for him opposite Nick Bosa. And I do think San Francisco makes a good pick here. Again, not a home run. It's not an A+ move, but if it's a B+, that's fine. I'm going to tell you this now. There's not going to be many B+ picks in this year's draft. There's so many variables in place. There's too many red flags on some players, and it really is a pick your poison of who you like. And, Mykel is a well-rounded player that has room to grow, hence his, again, 20-year-old age. He is, by far, the best run defending edge rusher in this year's class. The stats may not prove that entirely. The PFF grade may push back on that, but again, a 82.9 pass or run defense grade per PFF, 30 pressures, 6 sacks, and 11.6 pass rush win rate. There is some debate as to whether he's injury prone, and I've already seen some Javon Kinlaw comparisons. Stop that. There's a big difference in a player that has injury history and a player that is injury prone. There's a big difference in a player that was hurt and a player that is always hurt. And Javon Kinlaw had chronic knee injuries coming out of South Carolina. There was clear medical red flags on him. And Mykel is almost the opposite. Only missed a handful of games due to ankle injury, played through an ankle injury last year, and they had foot surgery a couple of years ago, but that really hasn't been a nagging injury for him. He himself said he's fully healthy, ready to go for practice and OTAs. So he's a healthy player that does not have this lengthy injury history, doesn't have these medical red flags. You saw players like Mike Green, Will Johnson, other players that have clear red flags of their character or medical falling in this year's class. Mykel's not one of them. So I'm going to push back on that narrative because it's simply not true. What Mykel is, though, again, is a strong, bull-rushing, powerful defensive edge rusher that has 34 3/8-inch arms. So you want to get into the conversation about, stopping running backs and ball carriers from getting to the corner quickly, getting into open space. Mykel can stop that for San Francisco. He's not going to be, this player you put on your defense and say, oh, the game's changed as a run defender, but he's going to lift the floor of your group and give you a higher ceiling as a run defender on the edge. He can stop mobile quarterbacks from getting outside of the pocket and scrambling with those arms. He can be, being held by a tackle, but also make plays, knowing how long the arms are on the edge that he is. He has a great anchor. He's going to be able to kind of diagnose plays well as a run defender, as a pass rusher. And again, you're not going to have these big body tackles, these big guards body him up. It's going to be very hard for NFL linemen to bully him around, and he's going to likely be bullying them instead. So you're getting a very strong player. I don't want to compare him to Jared Verse, but Jared Verse came into last year or 2 years ago with the Rams and was a really good player, right? But he won with power. He wanted to run over the weaker tackle on an opposing offensive line. That's probably going to be what Mykel Williams does in year one for San Francisco. I wouldn't expect 10 sacks, 12 sacks. In fact, it'll be hard, I think, for him to get there in his entire career. But he's a player that projects to be a 10-year-plus player, a player that you can say will hang around in the NFL. The traits he has plays for a long time in football. Every team needs a player that can be a good run defender, can play on base downs, where San Francisco, even if they would have brought back Leonard Floyd, still lacked that kind of player. So I think it's a good pick for San Francisco. You can also argue that with the growth he needs to make as a pass rusher, San Francisco can kind of mitigate that by utilizing him on the interior on passing down. So say on first and second down, say it's first and 10, say it's second and 7, although the NFL has gotten more pass heavy in recent seasons, there is a turn back to being a run heavy offensive scheme throughout the entire league. You're seeing teams draft running backs, pay running backs. And I think Mykel can be a really good base down edge rusher, set the edge, keep and contain quarterbacks and running backs, push them back inside the tackles for Nick Bosa and company on the interior, Fred Warner, whoever else is playing on the middle part of the field for them. But also on third downs, on third and longs, I do think there is a very valuable trait Mykel has where you can slide him inside. And I think there is some credence to the idea that San Francisco could be on the prowl, if you will, for a more speed rusher, a more pass rushing edge rusher compared to Mykel, who's that run defender on the exterior. But the hope is that you have Samo, you have Yetur Gross-Matos, you have Nick Bosa. If Mykel can play on the edge on first and second down, move him inside on third down, on third and long or whatnot, and you have a defender that can bully guards and centers, force some interior pressure, maybe force guys to the outside where Nick Bosa can clean things up for you, Samo can clean things up for you, or on day 2 or day 3, draft the pass rusher that has the speed and the pass rushing moves, a Femi Oladejo, wink, wink, from UCLA, a David Walker from Central Arkansas, guys San Francisco have shown some interest in. You get those guys into the fray, Mykel becomes a 3-down player for you, and that really is valuable at the NFL level. I think Saleh values that so much. There's a reason why you hear when you talk about John Lynch talking about, Mykel Williams and Shanahan talking about Mykel Williams, a common theme is that Robert Saleh really honed in on him and loved him as a player. And I'm not surprised whatsoever. John Lynch kind of gave the pick away in his pre-draft press conference. So again, not a surprise move, but I think an overall steady move. And I think, Mykel, where he played at Georgia, playing against NFL caliber talent, also just a winner. Like Mykel comes from a winning culture at Georgia, and I think it's really hard to teach people how to win. And when you bring back Robert Saleh, you have Chris Kosaric, you bring in Brant Boyer, you gut your entire defense. You're trying to kind of weed out the fat, if you will, right? You cut Floyd and Collins, and you're letting Hufanga go. And not saying any of those players are bad. In fact, I wouldn't have mind keeping some of those players. But that said, it's kind of a culture shift, a culture cleansing happening in San Francisco. Nick Sorensen is now gone. Brian Schneider is gone. And you're rebuilding your defense. Getting players that know how to win in the building really matter. And for the first time since arguably Dee Ford, San Francisco actually has a potential 3-down player. And even Dee Ford, he really wasn't a great run defender. So again, I'm not projecting Mykel to be a tremendous player and get you 12.5 sacks a year and be a DPOY. But I do think opposite Nick Bosa, it's almost the best of both worlds. Again, not an A+ pick, but a solid, safe pick. I think when you dive into...
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
I told you before in our mock drafts that it doesn't matter who San Francisco picks, that there is always going to be, that player is still on the board and this player is there and that player has these traits and that player has those traits that we like more and prefer more over what Mykel possesses. However, when you look at players on the board like Jalen Walker and you have Shamar Stewart and Mike Green and James Pierce Jr. and Walter Nolen and Derek Harmon. While you can certainly pitch me on the idea of some of those players, I love and still love Walter Nolen. The Cardinals got him, which is very painful to know that Jake Brendel has to play Walter Nolen twice a year going forward, depending on if San Francisco keeps him in the future, which at least this year it's pretty likely. So it's a lot of pain there for San Francisco. But I do think that Mykel has a higher floor than all of those players. I think he fits what San Francisco wanted to do better than all of those players. I think where maybe there was concerns about Jalen Walker being caught in between positions, Mykel plays two positions that San Francisco actually values. I don't think Jalen Walker actually fits San Francisco's defensive scheme. Is he an off-ball linebacker? Is he an edge rusher? He didn't really fit either one of those positions all too well. Whereas Mykel is, a real edge rusher, a 6'5", 265-pound frame. He can play inside, he can play outside. Shamar Stewart didn't have the production, but it was all on projections, and he goes to a team where he can sit for a year or at least rotate in with Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati, unless they trade him, which I don't think will happen now that day one's over with. But Shamar was a good run defender, but he was kind of that reckless player, whereas Mykel is much more in control of himself. There is some erratic play here or there, but it's more of a, if you can control his pass rushing plan, you'll see more of the erratic play cleared up, and I think San Francisco can do that, and he's not a project player. Shamar Stewart's a project player that you hope can develop. Mykel can at least play on day one for you on first and second down, which really shapes how you can create a really good draft class where San Francisco has to hit. Mykel is going to be a starter for you. He is a hit. Again, may not have the Mike Green potential or the Shamar Stewart potential, but he's going to be a really good player for you for a long time. We talked on day 2, Landon Jackson, JT Tuimoloau, guys that are, don't have these extremely high ceilings, but are good kind of base level players to help round out your roster and be good for you for the next, 5 to 10 years. Mykel Williams is that. And I think if you debated on, why didn't they take Walter Nolen? Well, yes, I would have loved to have Walter Nolen. I think it's a clear indication as where San Francisco views Mykel Williams compared to the defensive tackles in this year's class. Derek Harmon went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nolen goes to the Cardinals. Mason Graham goes to the Cleveland Browns via trade down, and Tylee Williams goes to the Lions. I think San Francisco sees the class and says, you know what? The edge rushing class has more variables, more wild cards compared to the defensive tackle class. And I think they believe that day 2 and day 3 are the days to go snag their defensive tackles of the future compared to edge rusher, which, Mykel on the board was the safest pick, the highest floor pick. And I think an all-around more well-rounded player than, say, James Pierce Jr., Green, Stewart, and Jalen Walker. You can argue maybe San Francisco is being too safe in a time and place where you really got to hit on your picks. Maybe it was the safer option for sure, but overall, what would you rather do? Risk Shamar Stewart being a bust or James Pierce Jr.'s character concerns being a problem? Mike Green didn't get picked on day 1 at all. So I think San Francisco made the right choice, the smart choice. And even then, John Lynch told the media and told us as fans that they were trying to trade up for Mykel Williams because they were really concerned that teams ahead of them, probably the Saints and the Bears, were going to take him. And you heard throughout the first round that the Panthers wanted to trade back. And I think there may have been some conversations being had at San Francisco and Carolina, but they couldn't work out a deal. And San Francisco kind of got lucky, at least in their eyes, that their player was on the board when they picked. It's very rare that a team that sitting outside of the top 10, they're in love with, falls to them. And I think that for San Francisco, they find themselves in a similar position to the Indianapolis Colts, who watched Tyler Warren fall to 14 to them. They're like, yes, this is who we always wanted as our tight end. This is great. Their player they fell in love with fell to them. San Francisco is in that exact same category. So if you want to talk about from their own perspective, the quote unquote winners of the draft, not debating and grading picks, but just their own perspective, I think San Francisco views themselves as a winner of round one, knowing the one player they were in love with, infatuated with. And I think an underrated aspect of Mykel Williams being drafted here is that John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Chris Kocurek, and Robert Saleh, this was their guy. There was a consensus, a player in their head, a consensus. If that guy's on the board, that's who we want. And they were being aggressive, calling teams, trying to make sure he was their guy. So I think in their minds, they won today. You can see Kyle and John in the post-draft press conference smiling, kind of relieved, like, oh my God, how we do that. And I think, it kind of saves them. But I do want to get into the idea that did the Jacksonville Jaguars save the San Francisco 49ers offseason thus far? But first, I want to kindly ask you to like, share, and subscribe. You can also use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERS, ACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. So if you want to see Mykel Williams play for your San Francisco 49ers this season, go to SeatGeek.com and use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERS, ACCESS, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Okay, I have a theory that the Jacksonville Jaguars are somehow the San Francisco 49ers guardian angels this offseason. And a lot of this dates back to the coaching carousel because Robert Saleh believed he was going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach. He was rounding up coaches. He was putting together his coaching staff when Liam Cohen, the Jaguars' now head coach, kind of burned to the Buccaneers and left in the middle of the night like a thief in the night and was like, nope, goodbye, I'm gone. Didn't tell anybody. So that happened. Saleh obviously comes back to San Francisco as the DC. We're all happy and like, what's going on in Jacksonville? That's kind of the first, like, okay, that was weird. Jacksonville fires Trent Baalke and then they get, Liam Cohen and they get their own guys in the building. And, that was kind of the first step into a gift from the NFL gods, if you will, to bring back Robert Saleh. Today was, I think, the second instance of the Jacksonville Jaguars being San Francisco's guardian angel thus far. Now, obviously, we will see what each pick and each player turns out to be over the course of their first contracts in the NFL with their respective teams. However, the way the draft was looking to play out pre-Jaguars trade for Travis Hunter was that you were probably going to get, Cam Ward goes 1, Travis Hunter goes to the Browns at 2, Abdul Carter goes 3, Will Campbell goes to the Patriots at 4, and the Jaguars either take Ashton Jeanty or McMillan. But because the Jaguars traded up to 2 and got their receiver, their offensive player they were looking for, the entire first round, in my eyes, changed. The entire top 10 changed. Cam Ward was a given, but when Hunter goes 2, Carter goes 3, at 4, Will Campbell goes. So relatively like all the same players, but because you shift one team out of that top 5 and it being Jacksonville getting Hunter, not the Browns get Mason Graham, giving the Raiders Ashton Jeanty, and in return, not taking McMillan at 5 at the Jacksonville pick. That gives the Panthers an open reign to go up there, select McMillan from Arizona as a wide receiver, where that could have been Jalen Walker. But also, I think you were looking at teams of like, that could have been Mykel Williams. And so I do wonder that if the Jaguars really did change what was going to happen in the top 10, leading to Mykel being on the board, you have to think the Bears go Colson Loveland, which probably would have happened anyways. But I think it kind of changed things. The Saints don't take McMillan. I think it opened a door where if you listen to what John Lynch said, all the players they liked were on the board there. And the assumption is it's Mykel Williams, Jalen Walker, Walter Nolen, Shamar Stewart. He says they were three. It's a group of those. Obviously, Mykel won out. But I think it shows you that the Jaguars being aggressive and having some sort of a dysfunction / coming to their own, coming to a conclusion that Trent Baalke isn't the guy, it has kind of changed the outlook for San Francisco in this offseason, getting Salah back and Williams falling to them. So I guess you can say thank you to the Jacksonville Jaguars this offseason, which isn't a common phrase, I would say. But I guess in this case, thank you, Jacksonville. You certainly helped us out. But I think there's a lot of people that aren't torn on the pick of Mykel Williams, but are just kind of like, yeah, it's great, but, whatever. It's not a flashy pick. Mykel's not going to give you spin moves and not going to wow you, but you put him in a one-on-one situation as an edge rusher against a smaller tackle. Like, think about this. We have watched Colton McKivitz, Mike McGlinchey been bullied against the bull rush. And San Francisco has never really had a player like that, where now you pair him with Nick Bosa and you have a guy that most teams are, depending on what San Francisco does on the interior, going to double Nick Bosa. I dare you to leave Mykel one-on-one with probably your least or your worst offensive tackle.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
It's probably not going to go well for you. And so I think it's a good pick. In some form, it could be a great pick. Again, only 20 years old. There's a lot of room to grow. And I think that, it kind of shows you where San Francisco's mindset was. And they value the long arms and the ability to be a run defender. San Francisco has really struggled in recent years to set the edge. Leonard Floyd couldn't do it very well last year. Clelin Ferrell was okay at doing it 2 years ago, but he got hurt late. Chase Young couldn't do it. Randy Gregory couldn't do it. And really ever since the second half of that 2023 season, where despite them going to the Super Bowl, we saw against the Packers and the Lions in the playoffs, and even Kansas City to a certain extent, that running the football was hard to defend for San Francisco. Even last year, James Conner, that game at Levi Stadium, ran all over them in that second half. And I think while Mykel is not a one-man fix for the problem, it is a fix for one of the problems you had. And if you can't contain the edge, you are going to just allow wide open running lanes to running backs and receivers on jet sweeps and mobile quarterbacks. And, I think it's really smart when you're going to play James Conner and, Kyron Williams and Kenneth Walker III in Seattle. And maybe those teams draft running backs tomorrow and on day 3, like, you're going to have to defend the run. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, other big name backs in the NFL, Joe Mixon in Houston. You have to stop the run. And I think, 2-minute drill, 4 minutes left in the football game, you're down by 3. Teams want to milk the clock. And to do that, they run the football. Having Mykel Williams does at least give you the ability to have a chance now to hopefully get the ball back on a 3-and-out and give your offense a chance, which I think San Francisco is banking on the offense of Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, Demarcus Robinson. When he comes back, Brandon Ayuk and, the rest of the weapons they have in the offensive line to be able to score 25, 27 points a game again, if they're healthy. And to be able to do that, you have to get the ball back. And a lot of that starts on the defensive line. You saw a plethora of defensive tackles and defensive edge rushers get taken today. You want to know why? Teams realize what the Rams do and Philadelphia does changes football games. You're seeing teams take offensive tackles and guards early on day 1 because teams realize we have to be able to, one, protect the quarterback, run the football, and control the line of scrimmage. And on defense, you have to get to the quarterback, stop teams running the football, and control the line of scrimmage. So you're saying this back and forth, tug of war of, who can control the line better than others. And San Francisco, as of now, is currently behind some of those teams, but Mykel Williams certainly helps you play catch up a little faster than a James Pierce would, a Mike Green would, a Shamar Stewart would, or even a Jalen Walker would. And I can argue that knowing the needs San Francisco has, maybe not as much as Derek Harmon would, but there were some medical red flags on him. Not sure exactly what was there, but certainly much more than Walter Nolen would, who I do think is an underrated run defender, but he can get tossed around sometimes. Mykel's is not going to get moved around by the interior offensive line much if he does play inside. Which, funny enough, brings me to what Kyle Shanahan had to say today about Mykel Williams, And he talked about a very similar comp, a player that was in San Francisco for a long, long time, pre-Shanahan, during Kyle Shanahan's tenure, during Saleh and DeMeco Ryans. And he talked about the similarities between Mykel Williams and Arik Armstead. And I think it's really telling that you hear a player like that. And of course, the first reaction is, well, he plays outside, he can play inside. I think while, yes, we championed and cheered that Arik Armstead, the financial situation was off the books and he was always injured and stuff, and all that's true and whatnot, San Francisco has really missed a player like him, whether he was out due to injury or even last year or when his first year not in San Francisco. Funny enough, now in Jacksonville. So I think it's on point, on par. Obviously, time will tell. Armstead became a really good player. Took some time, which I think as a pass rusher for Mykel, it's going to be kind of that same track record of taking a couple of years to find himself, to develop those pass rushing moves. But Arik Armstead always had the power to move guards, to move centers, to free up space, to take up double teams. Now, Arik played primarily in 2019 on the interior, but later in his career, 22, 23, 21, was utilized in a bunch of different ways to help free up space for, at the time, Ebukam, Amenahue, Arden Key, and Nick Bosa. So I think you are going to see a more rotational usage of Mykel Williams. However, I think he's a three-down player. I think San Francisco got, I don't think James Pierce is a three-down player. I don't think Mike Green, for as good as he is, 17 sacks at Marshall, incredible pass rush moves, I don't think he's a three-down player. I don't think Shamar Stewart currently is a three-down player. Mykel can play three downs for you, and that changes football games. For San Francisco, who wasn't healthy much last year, who has had problems with D Ford being healthy, who has missed time throughout his entire tenure in San Francisco, they've been trying to find the other guy opposite Nick Bosa. And again, Mykel's not going to be the pass rusher you love and you want, hence why many fans and pundits wanted James Pierce Jr. and Mike Green, which I get it. I totally get it. Mykel, I think, is that baseline player for you, and I think is an overall going to be a better pro. The box score may not say that, and again, that feeds back into the Arik Armstead comparison where at times it felt like Armstead was invisible. However, he was a dirty worker, and funny enough, San Francisco drafts a bulldog, and I think they're going to get a dog in a player like Mykel Williams. Speaking of James Pierce Jr. and why they took Williams over him or Mike Green. Obviously, Mike Green had some red flags, some assault issues that the NFL kind of told you how they viewed him tonight. And I'll tell you this, I was mortified that the Rams, that the Chiefs, that the Philadelphia Eagles, who somehow got Jahad Campbell and Josh Simmons goes to the Chiefs. So it kind of happened in a different way. But I was terrified that they were going to get Mike Green. And I was like, oh my God, like this is my worst nightmare. A red flag player that somehow falls and is awesome elsewhere, which could still happen on day two. Philadelphia has plenty of picks. to make a move up if they like him enough. However, I think Mykel, compared to James Pierce Jr., who had some do I love football questions, had also a weapons charge, and is really only a pass rush specialist. Mykel is a clean player. He was a team captain for 4 games last year. He's 20 years old. He's a good player. He's a good person. And I think the track record would lean his way. Now, again, you don't want to sit back and criticize players for mistakes when they're 20 and they're 19. We all make some, albeit in maybe not assault ways, but we all make mistakes at a young age. I think Mykel has his head on straight, is a safer pick on and off the field. And I think when it's all said and done, Mykel Williams, excuse me, I think has the potential. And I think if he can grow into a productive pass rusher, can certainly be a 10-plus year veteran in the NFL compared to James Pierce Jr. and Mike Green, who I think are, third down pass rushers or first down pass rushers, not going to be good run defenders, at least now. I think the projections favor a player like Mykel more. He's younger than these guys, has no red flags. And it's funny, in his press conference tonight, he was telling the media, I cannot wait to practice. I can't wait to pick Nick Bosa's mind. There was this enthusiasm about football. And I think San Francisco, we talked a lot about, why San Francisco may or may not like some red flag players. Walter Nolen may have some immaturities. Mike Green, of course, talked about him a ton already today. But they want people that want to play football. George Kittle, Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams, Brock Purdy. Now, obviously, those are really good players for you, and you're going to pay Kittle. You've already paid him once. You're going to pay him again. They invest in players like that. And I think San Francisco saw that, look, Mykel may struggle as a pass rusher. There may be times where, like Arik Armstead, if he feels invisible, but he wants to be here. He wants to grow. He's a coachable player. And I think they value having a person like that in their locker room. And I think they drafted a player that in the next couple of years or so, if it all goes well for him, he could have a C on his jersey. That's a big deal for them, to invest in players like that, to want to pay players like that, to want to draft players like that. San Francisco often, they've been burned before, right? Reuben Foster is the biggest example of that, where it's we thought we loved you and you were a heck of a player at Alabama, but you're fighting doctors at the combine. Then you ask Nick Saban, no, he's great. And that burned San Francisco to a point of they just don't draft Bama players anymore. And now you have a player in Mykel Williams who, again, may not have the upside of those other guys on the board currently or at the time, but, good player, loves football, could be a captain, sets the example. And that goes back to kind of bringing things full circle for a second of that culture cleansing, that kind of, getting back to basics, getting back to who we are. San Francisco cleaned the slate for Robert Saleh for a reason. Obviously, I would have loved to have kept Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd to kind of give you a better baseline, but this is a pick that Saleh and Shanahan and Lynch and Chris Kocurek are kind of putting their flag on, saying, you were the guy over other players that, could potentially outbox score Mykel Williams at the NFL level. But you see him stand up. He's 6'5", 200, nearly 70 pounds. He's going to be hard to miss. And when you hear him talk about, I cannot wait to practice, I want to get out there. And I think Kyle Shanahan had one of the better quotes of the day about Mykel Williams. And he said here, and I quote, "We have a 20-year-old who looks like a man on tape. To look like a man on tape when you're going against 25-year-olds is a big difference." And don't forget, the college football landscape has changed, where a decade ago, guys are 21, 22 coming out. They're 20. I think Aldon Smith was 20 years old. And while yes, guys still come out young because of the COVID year, a lot of players are still 25, 24 because of the transfer portal and the NIL. You're seeing younger players like Mykel Williams play against, Kelvin Banks Jr., who he annihilated at Texas. So He's playing against NFL caliber talent. He's playing against guys that are half a decade older than him, have been in the weight room longer than him, and he's bullying those guys on a consistent basis. So again, I'm not going to tell you it's a home run, but it is a potential home run with the likelihood it's at least a double or a triple when it's all said and done. So there's no red flags there. There's really no downside to a player like Mykel Williams, unless you want to get into the weeds about, well, he may never develop into a pass rusher. And you're right, there is no promise that comes to fruition. However, there is so much to like from him. You can overlook something that will be something he was going to have to work on anyways. And you hope the power can translate into an NFL caliber edge rusher and edge setter as a run defender, but also he already has this hyper athletic body. He isn't super quick. He isn't super fast, but again, when you possess all that power, it has to go somewhere. And if you're bullying guards and tackles, it's going to go somewhere. And I think Mykel Williams is a good overall pick. It's a good start to a draft that has to hit. And I think San Francisco...
There are people out there all across the country pushing boundaries to grow the game of golf. Like champion speed golfer Lauren Cupp, who plays faster than anyone else. And Will Lowry, whose work in the golf community inspires more kids to get into the game. As a champion partner of the Masters, Bank of America supports everyone determined to find out what's possible in golf and in life. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Bank of America N.A. member FDIC, copyright 2025, Bank of America Corporation, all rights reserved.
Took, again, not the best player, I think, or potentially the best player on the board when it's all said and done. But I think as of tonight, Mykel projects to be a really good player at the NFL level. Could you see a player in 10 years, Walter Nolen or James Pierce Jr. or Mike Green, have better careers? Sure, as a pass rusher, I wouldn't push back on that. However, San Francisco took the safe pick, the right pick, on and off the field, and got a player that you are going to want to invest in. And even to a point where, I wouldn't have been shocked to watch teams like the Falcons, teams like the Cardinals, teams like, even had McMillan not gone, the Saints, the Bears. I think San Francisco was actually genuinely scared that the Saints or Bears, who had Dennis Allen written all over those guys, being the former head coach of the Saints and the DC of the Bears now, Mykel fits the archetype. And I'm not shocked. There were a lot of players that, could have gone there. The mocks were kind of right, kind of wrong. Mine was about 45%, 50% correct, which I think most of them were a little shaky tonight. A lot of chalk picks that made sense, but some shaky ones. And I think San Francisco got one of those chalk picks where you just say, yep, that makes sense. Not going to blow you away. You're not going to be this Hall of Fame caliber player on day one, but overall, I think a nice, solid pick and a good start to a draft where San Francisco really has to hit. And I think today is a good hit. To use a baseball analogy, they're down by 3 in the bottom of the 9th. Start a rally. Mykel Williams is a rally starter for the San Francisco 49ers defense. Saleh, Goserick, Shanahan, and Lynch. And now you're asking those guys, the regime, to be able to drive him in. And what I mean by that is get you a defensive tackle, get 2 of those guys, go get an edge rusher again, get a cornerback, get an offensive lineman. San Francisco is in a really good place. And I think, we'll see what day 2 holds for San Francisco. They have 3 picks, 43, 70, 75, and 100. So they have 3 picks tomorrow on day 2. There is moves they can make, trades up, trades back. We'll see what transpires in rounds 2 and 3. But I do have to wonder, it's a little theory, having a little fun here tonight on day 1 of the NFL draft. Mykel being able to play the interior, maybe even at a full-time rate like Arik Armstead did later on in his career, I do wonder if maybe San Francisco could double dip at edge rusher really on day 2. Landon Jackson, JT Tuimoloau. I think they are for sure gunning for Femi Oladejo from UCLA or David Walker from Arkansas, but maybe there was somebody else, Elijah Roberts from SMU. I think there was a chance that they don't go defensive tackle as early as we think, knowing that Mykel can play inside. But of course, I think everybody's focus on day 2 is now on the defensive tackles. And before I get into who are some potential guys to target on day 2 for them on the interior defensive line, I want to ask you to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X, 49ers.access is the Instagram. You can also get yourself a can of goat fuel down below using our link in the description and save yourself 10% off your first purchase. I was doing my live NFL draft reactions today on 95.7 The Game, on the YouTube, on the Odyssey app, and live on the radio. And I tell you what, I had that can of goat fuel right beside me the whole time saying, keep me up, keep me energized. And I'm not much of a late night coffee drinker, but I'll tell you this, goat fuel, it keeps you moving. So get yourself a can down below and save yourself 10% off your purchase by using that link in the descriptions. Okay, day 2, round 2, round 3, defensive line. Who could San Francisco be eyeing to pair with Nick Bosa, Sam O, and Mykel Williams on their defensive line in 2025? There's a lot of good picks here. And I'm proud to say that my first 2 picks may come true. Mykel was my first round pick in my latest mock draft, my predicted mock draft for San Francisco. But Darius Alexander from Toledo is still there. Would love him on the interior. He feels a massive need. He's a great run defender, a great pass rusher. He knows how to get to the quarterback and knows with his long 34-inch arms how to contain run ball carriers. So I would love that. If you want a more bowling ball, space eater, bulldozer, CJ West, Indiana's there on the board. Alfred Collins is more of just a run defender. Not going to give you much as a pass rusher. Cameron Jackson kind of fills that need as well. On the inverse, I really think Robert Saleh is going to fall in love with one of 2 players on the interior. They're similar, but kind of different tiers, if you will. The first one being Omar Norman-Lott. He was in for a 30 visit. He's just an incredible player. There was some injury concerns. I think it was a knee with him. If that's wrong, excuse me, but or I apologize for that. But Omar Norman-Lott has heavy hands, and I think San Francisco, they got the run defender that they can hope grow into a pass rusher. But I do think that they want to find their Javon Hargrave replacement, if you will, if that's a good comparison, and get their pass rusher on the interior to pair with Bosa and now Mykel Williams. They already have Kalia Davis and Evan Anderson and Jordan Elliott. Those are run defenders on the interior. And he gets some pass rushers. Omar Norman-Lott fits that for them out of Tennessee. Vernon Broughton from Texas. I would love that move for them. In our latest mock draft, funny enough, we took Darius Alexander and traded that for Vernon Broughton. So there's a chance, folks, that we are on the right track. Last year we got Pearsall, Bethune, and Garendo right. Maybe we can get some more this year. Already 1 for 1 in our mock draft predictions. Then you get into more of your well-rounded players, your Jamari Caldwells, your Joshua Farmers. And I think if San Francisco has a really good opportunity here to nab 1 or 2 of these guys on day 2, you can certainly have the conversation for about day 3. It depends on who's there. Obviously, each team has different mock drafts and draft boards and who they value and what they need. So it depends, but San Francisco, to me, is in a really good place walking into day 2. You've seen some teams trade up for some players, the Falcons being one of those guys, the Giants getting a quarterback, Jackson Dart. And you also saw some teams trade back, Texans, the Rams. So Texans are, I think, a massive thorn in San Francisco's side. The Browns could be as well. So on day 2, it'll be kind of who can get there first for the said player. And I think San Francisco having 10 more picks, and even John Lynch said, Mykel's not going to be the last defensive lineman taken. So I'm expecting 2 to 3 more, and I'm hoping it is a combination of Darius Alexander, CJ West, Omar Norman-Lott, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Jamari Caldwell, Joshua Farmer, Cameron Jackson, or TJ Sanders. I tell you this, if they can pair a player like Darius Alexander or CJ West with a TJ Sanders or an Omar Norman-Lott, you are going to find me very, very happy. And I think this fan base would be elated knowing those could be the picks on day 2, maybe even day 3 if things kind of fall their way on the board. On the offensive line, though, I do think there are a couple of players San Francisco could target on day 2. And it really depends on how you view the tackles. A lot of offensive linemen went in the first round. You had Will Campbell go. Armin Membu went. Josh Connerly went. Josh Simmons went. Kelvin Banks went. Donovan Jackson went. You had Tyler Booker go to the Cowboys at pick 12. A lot of offensive linemen went early and in the first round. However, I think if I was San Francisco, and I think they view it the same way, at pick 43, they were in a good place to nab and draft that offensive tackle. Now, probably a little too rich for Charles Grant at pick 43. However, if they want to trade back or trade up from pick 75 or 100, I can see it happening for sure. Took him at, I think, 75 in our last mock draft. But I think, Jonas Savaiinaea from Arizona can play guard and can play tackle. He's a clear-cut Colton McKivitz replacement. I think he could play left guard on day 1 for them and help improve the interior next to Jake Brendel and Trent Williams. So a good pick there. If you want to go strictly guard, I think you begin to have the conversation about Dylan Fairchild from Georgia. Clear-cut guard, fits the wide zone scheme entirely, and, funny enough, would be a Mykel Williams teammate. So I'm sure they've had their own battles on the defensive line and offensive line for Georgia in practices. So maybe there is a pitch Mykel makes to San Francisco on day 2. Take my teammate Dylan Fairchild, but those are 3 guys that can view them taking. Maybe they address linebacker on day 2. Could be a Chris Paul Jr. situation. Could be a Jeffrey Bassa draft pick. But I think San Francisco, I know you're going to have the Jaguars are a winner, or the Titans are a winner, the Giants are a winner, the Falcons get 2 defensive linemen, they're a winner. I think San Francisco they drafted an underrated, no-nonsense, non-flashy player that usually doesn't play well in media, but on the field, those are usually the guys that win games for you. So I think it's a B-plus move. You're in a good spot. And again, you have a Riley starter for you. Now it's up to those guys, Lynch, Shanahan, Saleh, to drive him home, get him some help on the interior, and have a great day 2. They have 3 picks, could have 4, could have 5 when it's all said and done. Who knows? But a very exciting time for San Francisco. And look, it's hard to hate what they did, and that's a really good thing. A lot of people, including myself, were scared that it was not going to be a good day for the 49ers, but overall took a good player at a good spot. The guy they always wanted, the guy they viewed as the guy at pick 11. So it's a win for them. It's a win for us. And overall, it feels like a win for the San Francisco 49ers on day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Tell me down below what you think of Mykel Williams. Do you like it? Do you love it? How do you feel? And what do you think San Francisco needs to do on day 2 of the NFL Draft, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific time? If you want to see my takeaways from day 2 on 95.7 The Game, we are live at 6 p.m., probably a little after San Francisco makes their first pick, barring a trade, but we'll talk about their first pick at 43, and we'll dive into the rest of the day of rounds 2 and 3 on the NFL Draft. And hope you love the show. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. Leave us that 5-star review. Again, tell me what you think about Mykel Williams. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, stay faithful.